que va a faltar. Gracias.
So I came upon the city by accident. I was born and grew up in Georgia, but I've never been to that city, which is located right in the center. So my co-screenwriter showed me the photos, and at that time I was living in New York, and it was hard for me to believe that I didn't know about this kind of space existing there. And I went to visit the city, and I knew that I had to actually stay and do something. And I moved because of that from New York to Georgia, and I spent last 3.5 years basically in or around that city making the film. So it was pretty much an accident, but a lucky one. It happened quite organically, actually, because when I tried to force the process, by having casting sessions, it didn't work out because everybody came prepared and it became very fake. Everybody had an idea of what kind of film they wanted to be in themselves, so it didn't work out. And I had a chance to be in the city, to live there for about 6 months. And about the end of 4 months, I think it was a confluence of events. It was not an accident, but because I was looking on purpose, but also it happened that these people were in the same space as I was in, and they came to me, actually. And it was very organic because I think they were the perfect, I didn't have any doubts. They were the perfect, they were the perfect part of the film in a way. So, and the city itself is a character. Is a character, but I think any kind of art without human beings or not for human beings is not interesting for me. So, but as well, I hate the idea of having beautiful or stunning backdrops. It's not, the city is not a backdrop. It's a character that speaks. It's a character that has a meaning and participates in the film. I didn't plan anything specifically, and actually, it wasn't just the number of specific days that I spent with them, and it wasn't anything planned that on a specific day I would do something or I would ask them specifically something. For about 3 years, I think that the relationship continued, and even after 3 years, when we were almost done, I was able to find some things that I thought was not there before, and they were able to offer me more things and open up in a way that they also thought that it wouldn't be possible before. So I was just there. It was very important for me to understand, just to humanely relate to them, and I think they also felt that I was not in a hurry. I think most of the time, out of those 3 years, most of the time was spent just thinking and just being there and just talking to them. So I think they also understood, and at some point I just tell them, okay, I'm going to put the camera and let's, and at other times we would just talk and maybe drink and just talk about life, and I wouldn't turn on the camera, and some other times I would turn on the camera. So I didn't have a specific process because it was very important to, at every moment and every day, to understand how they feel at that moment, because I didn't want to push anything. But because I spent so much time with them, they let me into their families. I knew a lot of details about their lives, and I knew a lot of intimate details about their lives. So I was able to, in my head, have a picture of how I wanted to construct the film without telling them that we have to do this now, without directing them. So that was very important, actually, to find out and to have a detailed knowledge of their lives. And it just came through very gradually, it just came through very slowly, and it was very important not to hurry and not to push the process. Even now it's a little bit difficult for me to explain, At the end of editing, we arrived at some methodology that we understood, that we had this methodology, but a lot of the process was intuitive. And we understood that this is not a straightforward narrative film, and it's a film where emotions accumulate from episode to episode. And so it was very important to listen to the material, because it was so strong that we couldn't push it. Every time we pushed it and we forced it and we were violent with it in a way, it pushed back and it was very artificial. It didn't work. So we arrived at a place where each character has a certain time, and it's not a scene, but it's an episode. It's part of their lives. And each episode accumulates some kind of emotion, but also emotional knowledge. So it's a process of accumulation from episode to episode, and you don't analytically get to another episode unless emotionally you're not ready for it. So we were waiting for the emotion to accumulate and for this episode to give some kind of birth in a way. And I think it's very important, when you're making this kind of film, not to plan analytically how you're going to construct the film, but to understand emotionally what kind of film it's going to be. So all the sound, the audio, and the visual decisions were based on that. So, I didn't want, for example, to record any sound on location, because it was very important to have that intimacy between the characters, to have as few people as possible. Sometimes even my cinematographer or my assistant would leave and I would stay alone with the running camera. So it was very important not to violate that kind of relationship. And also when you record something on location, it's almost impossible to shape the sound. It's almost impossible to filter out things that you hear and that are important in your perception for the film. So that's why we went back after we finished the film and we recorded the specific sounds, and we recreated a lot of it on the stage in post-production. And editing-wise, the editor we lived together in one house in Georgia. And he came from Brazil, and it was important for him to come rather than for me to go somewhere else. We went together to that city. He met the characters. We stayed there for a couple of days, and then we spent about 7 or 8 months actually editing and playing with the material. So